Daniel Carter had never been good at reading maps. Back on Earth, he had once gotten lost in his own neighborhood after moving to a new apartment. Now, standing in a corridor that definitely did not lead to the engineering bay, he realized that some things never changed. The Valorian diplomatic station was massive. It hung in space like a silver flower, its petals spreading out in elegant curves that human architects could only dream of building. The Valorians had been traveling between stars when humans were still figuring out how to make fire. They had built empires, conquered worlds, and created technology that seemed like magic. And somewhere in this beautiful station, Daniel had taken a wrong turn. He looked at the walls around him. They were different here. Instead of the plain metal of the engineering sections, these walls were covered in living plants. Soft blue flowers grew from the surface, and tiny lights floated in the air like fireflies. The air smelled sweet, like honey and rain mixed together. This is definitely not the engineering bay. Daniel muttered to himself. He was about to turn back. When he saw her, she stood in the middle of a garden that seemed to have no ceiling. Stars shone above her head, though Daniel knew they were still inside the station. She wore a dress that looked like liquid silver, and her skin had a faint purple glow that all Valorians possessed. Her hair was white as snow and fell past her, shoulders like a waterfall, but it was her eyes that made Daniel forget how to breathe. They were golden, like two small suns, and when she turned to look at him, he felt like she could see everything he had ever been and everything he would ever become. "You are not supposed to be here," she said. Her voice was soft but carried the weight of someone used to being obeyed. Daniel's brain finally started working again. "I am so sorry," he said quickly. "I got lost. I was looking for the engineering section. The map said to go left, but I think I went right, and then there was another left, and honestly, I have no idea how I ended up here." He was talking too much. He always talked too much when he was nervous. The woman tilted her head slightly. "You are human." "Yes, ma'am." Daniel Carter. Engineer. Very lost engineer. "I've never spoken with a human before," she said. "Your kind is new to this part of the galaxy." Daniel nodded. "We have only been traveling in space for about 200 years. I know that is probably nothing compared to your people. The Valorian Empire has existed for 40,000 years, she said. There was no pride in her voice, just a simple statement of fact. Your entire civilization is younger than some of our oldest buildings. That does make me feel small, Daniel admitted with a nervous laugh. To his surprise, she smiled. It was a small smile, barely there, but it changed her whole face. She went from looking like a distant goddess to looking almost human. "I did not mean it as an insult," she said. "I find it interesting. Your people have achieved so much in such a short time. Most species take millions of years to reach the stars. Humans did it in mere thousands." "We are stubborn," Daniel said. "My grandmother used to say that humans are too stupid to know when to quit." She laughed. It was a soft sound, like bells ringing in the wind. "I like that. Most people who speak to me only say what they think I want to hear." Before Daniel could respond, the sound of heavy footsteps filled the garden. 4 guards appeared, their armor gleaming under the floating lights. They were tall, even for Valorians, and they carried weapons that hummed with energy. "Princess Alindra," the lead guard said with a bow. "We have been looking for you. Your father wishes to speak with you about the upcoming negotiations." Princess. Daniel felt his stomach drop. He had been rambling like a fool in front of a princess. Not just any princess, but the princess of the entire Valorian Empire. The guard turned to Daniel, and his golden eyes narrowed with suspicion. How did this human enter the royal gardens? "I got lost," Daniel said weakly. "He meant no harm," Princess Alindra said. Her voice had changed. It was colder now, more formal. He simply took a wrong turn. Please escort him back to the human section of the station. The guard did not look happy, but he nodded. As you wish, Princess. Two guards moved to stand on either side of Daniel. One of them grabbed his arm with a grip that was just a little too tight. Wait, Princess Alindra said. The guard stopped. She walked toward Daniel, and he noticed that she moved like water, smooth and graceful. What was your name again? Daniel Carter, Your Highness. Daniel Carter, she repeated, as if tasting the words. I hope you find your way to the engineering bay, Daniel Carter. Perhaps we will meet again. I doubt that, Your Highness. I am just an engineer. She smiled that small smile again. The universe is full of surprises. The guards led Daniel away. He looked back once and saw Princess Alindra standing in her garden, watching him go. Then the doors closed and she was gone. Later that night, Daniel sat in the small room he shared with his friend Kevin Walsh. Kevin was also an engineer, and they had known each other since their training days on Earth. You did what? Kevin nearly choked on his drink. I accidentally walked into the royal gardens and had a conversation with the princess of the Valorian Empire, Daniel said. He still could not believe it himself. Danny, do you have any idea how much trouble you could have been in? The Valorians are not known for being forgiving. People have been executed for less. She was nice, Daniel said. Different from what I expected. Kevin shook his head. Forget about her, Danny. She is a princess. You are an engineer from a backwater planet. Those two worlds do not mix. I know, Daniel said. I know. But as he lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, he could not stop thinking about golden eyes and a smile that had made him feel like he was worth something. He knew Kevin was right. He knew he would probably never see her again. Still, he hoped. Hope was a very human thing to feel. 3 weeks passed, and Daniel tried to forget about Princess Alindra. He focused on his work, fixing broken machines and keeping the human equipment running smoothly. The Valorians had better technology, but they did not understand human systems. That was why engineers like Daniel were needed on the station. But forgetting her was impossible. It started with small things. Daniel would be walking to the cafeteria, and suddenly she would be there, studying a human painting on the wall. He would be reading a book in the station's library, and she would appear at the next table, pretending to look at ancient texts. At first, Daniel thought it was just coincidence. The station was big, but not that big. It made sense that he might run into her sometimes. Then he noticed a pattern. She is following you, Kevin said one evening. They were eating dinner in the human section of the station, surrounded by other engineers and diplomats. That is crazy, Daniel said. Why would a princess follow me? I do not know, but I have eyes. Every time I see you somewhere outside work, she appears a few minutes later. Either she is stalking you, or you have the worst luck in the galaxy. Daniel looked down at his food. Maybe she is just curious about humans. There are hundreds of humans on this station. She could be curious about any of them. But she keeps showing up wherever you are. Kevin leaned closer. Be careful, Danny. Whatever game she is playing, you do not want to be caught in the middle of it. The next day, Daniel was working late in the observation deck. It was his favorite place on the station. The entire wall was a window that looked out into space. He could see distant stars, colorful clouds of gas, and sometimes ships passing by on their way to other worlds. He heard footsteps behind him and did not need to turn around to know who it was. You keep finding me, he said. You keep going to places where I can find you. Princess Alindra replied. Daniel turned to face her. She was not wearing her royal dress tonight. Instead, she wore simple clothes that made her look almost ordinary, almost human. Why? He asked. She walked to the window and stood beside him. For a long moment, she did not speak. She just looked at the stars. "Do you know what it is like to be royalty?" She finally asked. "No. Everyone wants something from you. Every word you say is measured, analyzed. Every smile must be perfect. Every decision must serve the empire." She paused. "I have advisors who have known me since I was born. They do not know my favorite color. They have never asked, 'What is your favorite color?'" Daniel asked. She turned to look at him, surprise in her golden eyes. "What? Your favorite color? What is it?" A slow smile spread across her face. "Blue, like the flowers in my garden. Like the oceans I have seen in pictures of Earth." "Earth has many blue oceans," Daniel said. "They are beautiful. Dangerous sometimes, but beautiful. I would like to see them someday." They talked for hours that night. Daniel told her about Earth, about his childhood in a small town, about his dreams of traveling to the stars. Alindra told him about the pressures of being a princess, about the expectations that have been placed on her since birth. She told him about the arranged marriage. "His name is Prince Maldois," she said. Her voice was flat, empty. "He is from the Dracori hegemony. Our empires have been rivals for centuries. This marriage would bring peace. Do you love him?" Daniel asked. Alindra laughed, but there was no joy in it. "I have met him twice. Both times, he spoke to my father more than he spoke to me. I am not a person to him. I am a treaty. That sounds terrible. It is duty. My people need peace. If my marriage can prevent a war that would kill millions, how can I refuse?" Daniel did not have an answer for that. On Earth, people married for love. The idea of marrying a stranger for political reasons seemed cruel and wrong. But he was just an engineer. What did he know about running an empire? Their meetings continued. Night after night, they would find each other on the observation deck. Daniel brought her human music, playing old songs from his personal collection. Alindra listened with wonder as voices sang about love, loss, and hope. "Your people feel everything so strongly," she said one night. "This song is about a man who lost his love, but he still hopes to see her again, even after death. Humans believe that love does not end," Daniel said. "It just changes. Valorians are taught to control our emotions. To feel too much is considered weakness. Maybe that is why your advisors never asked about your favorite color. They were taught not to care about such things." Alindra was quiet for a long time. "You care," she said softly. "I do." She reached out and touched his hand. Her skin was warm, warmer than he expected. "Thank you, Daniel, for seeing me. Not the princess. Just me." Ambassador Laura Bennett called Daniel to her office the next morning. She was a sharp woman with gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. "You have been spending a lot of time with Princess Alindra," she said. Daniel felt his heart stop. "I can explain. I am not asking for an explanation. I am giving you a warning." She stood and walked to the window. "Alien politics are dangerous. The Valorians may seem friendly, but they have their own goals. If you get caught up in royal affairs, no one can protect you. Not me, not Earth. No one. I understand. Do you?" She turned to face him. "That princess is about to be married to secure a peace treaty. If anything disrupts that marriage, there will be war. Millions will die. Do you want that on your conscience?" Daniel left her office feeling like he had been punched in the stomach. He knew she was right. He knew he should stay away from Alindra. But that night, he still went to the observation deck, and she was still there, waiting for him. Some things were stronger than logic. The celebration was the biggest event Daniel had ever seen. The entire station had been transformed into a palace of lights and colors. Music filled every corridor, and guests from 100 different worlds walked the halls in their finest clothes. Daniel was not a guest. He was working behind the scenes, making sure the human equipment ran smoothly. He wore his gray engineering uniform while everyone else wore silk and gold. From his position near the back of the Great Hall, he could see everything. He saw ambassadors making deals. He saw nobles laughing at jokes that were not funny. He saw wealth beyond anything he had ever imagined, and he saw her. Princess Alindra stood at the center of the hall, surrounded by light. She wore a dress that seemed to be made of stars themselves. Her white hair was arranged in an elaborate style, decorated with jewels that sparkled like tiny suns. She looked like a goddess god. She also looked miserable. Standing next to her was Prince Malloys of the Dracori hegemony. He was tall and handsome in a cold way, like a statue carved from ice. His scales shimmered green and gold, and his eyes were the color of blood. He spoke loudly about his victories in battle, his vast wealth, his powerful family. He never once looked at Alindra. Daniel watched his Emperor Thalver and raised his glass. The Emperor was an impressive figure, old but still strong. His presence commanded the room. "Tonight, we celebrate a new beginning," the Emperor announced. "For centuries, the Valorian Empire and the Dracori hegemony have been rivals. But tonight, we take the first step toward peace. My daughter, Princess Alindra, will be joined with Prince Malloys in a union that will bring prosperity to both our peoples." The crowd cheered. Daniel felt sick. Prince Malloys took Alindra's hand and held it up like a trophy. "I am honored to receive such a beautiful prize," he said. "The princess will make a fine addition to my household." A prize. An addition. Not a partner. Not a wife. A thing to be owned. Daniel gripped the railing in front of him so hard his knuckles turned white. He wanted to shout. He wanted to run down there and tell everyone that Alindra was more than a treaty, more than a political tool. She was a person who loved blue flowers and cried at human love songs. She was someone who had never been asked about her favorite color. But he was just an engineer. His voice meant nothing here. The celebration continued for hours. Daniel watched from the shadows, unable to leave, unable to look away. Finally, when the guests began to drift home and the music faded, he made his way to the observation deck. He needed to see the stars. He needed to remember that the universe was bigger than this station, bigger than politics and empires and arranged marriages. He was not alone for long. Alindra appeared silently, still wearing her dress of stars. But her hair was loose now, falling around her shoulders in messy waves. Her makeup was smudged around her eyes. She had been crying. "I did not think you would come," Daniel said softly. "I had to." She walked to the window and pressed her hand against the glass. "You did not even look at me, Daniel. Not once. I am going to spend the rest of my life with someone who sees me as furniture. You do not have to do this." "Yes, I do. If I refuse, there will be war. The Dracori will see it as an insult. They will attack, and millions will die. How can I be responsible for that?" Daniel moved to stand beside her. He could see her reflection in the glass, see the tears still wet on her cheeks. "On Earth," he said quietly, "we believe that everyone deserves to be happy. That life is not just about duty and sacrifice. That love matters. Love is a luxury I cannot afford. Maybe, but that does not make it less real." Alindra turned to face him. They were close now, closer than they had ever been. Daniel could see the gold flecks in her eyes, could feel the warmth radiating from her skin. "What would you do?" she asked. "If you were me?" Daniel thought about the question. He thought about duty and responsibility. He thought about war and peace. He thought about all the logical reasons why she should marry Prince Malloys and forget about a human engineer who had nothing to offer, but logic had never been his. "Strength. I would choose love," he said. "I would choose to be happy, even if it was hard. Even if everyone said it was wrong. And what if there was someone?" Alindra's voice was barely a whisper. Someone who made me feel like I was worth more than my crown? What then? Daniel's heart was beating so fast he thought it might explode. He knew what she was asking. He knew what he should say. He should tell her that it was impossible, that he was nobody, that she deserved better. Instead, he spoke the truth. I wish I could give you that life, he said. I wish I could take you away from all of this. I wish I could show you the oceans of Earth and the mountains and the forests. I wish I could spend every day making you smile. He turned away, unable to look at her anymore. The words came out before he could stop them, spoken so softly he thought she might not hear. I wish I could marry her. The silence stretched on forever. Daniel squeezed his eyes shut, feeling like the biggest fool in the galaxy. What was he thinking? She was a princess. He was nothing. He had just ruined everything. Then he felt a hand on his shoulder, gentle but firm, turning him around. Alindra stood before him, her golden eyes shining with something he had never seen before. Hope, joy, love. My answer is yes, she said. Daniel stared at her. What? You said you wished you could marry me. She smiled, and it was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. My answer is yes, but the treaty, the war, Prince Maldois, I do not care. She took his hands in hers. For the first time in my life, I do not care about any of it. You asked what I would do if I were me. Well, I am choosing love. I am choosing you. Daniel felt tears forming in his eyes. I have nothing to offer you. No wealth, no power, no title. You see me, Alindra said. That is worth more than all the gold in the galaxy. She leaned forward and pressed her forehead against his. It was a Valorian gesture of deep affection. He knew. Something reserved for family and loved ones. What happens now? Daniel asked. Now, we face the storm together. Outside the window, the stars continued to shine. They did not care about politics or treaties or the proper order of things. They just burned, bright and eternal, lighting the way for two people who had found something rare and precious in the cold darkness of space. They had found each other. The news spread through the station like fire through dry grass. Princess Alindra had refused to continue marriage negotiations with Prince Maldois. She had told her father that she would not marry the Dracori prince. She had told him that her heart belonged to another. By morning, everyone knew. By noon, the Dracori delegation had left the station in anger. By evening, Daniel was in chains. The guards had come for him while he was working in the engineering bay. Kevin had tried to stop them, but one engineer could not fight 4 Valorian soldiers. They had dragged Daniel through the corridors while people watched and whispered. Now he sat in a cold cell, his wrists bound by energy cuffs that hummed with power. The walls were bare metal. There were no windows, no furniture, except a hard bench. He had been here for hours, alone with his thoughts and his fear. The door opened, and 2 guards entered. Between them walked Emperor Thalvarin. The Emperor was even more impressive up close. He stood nearly 7 feet tall, and his presence filled the small cell like a physical force. His eyes were the same gold as Alindra's, but colder. Much colder. So, the Emperor said, his voice like thunder, you are the human who has destroyed everything. Daniel forced himself to meet the Emperor's gaze. I did not mean to cause trouble, Your Majesty. Did not mean to? The Emperor laughed, but there was no humor in it. You have seduced my daughter. You have ruined an alliance that took decades to build. The Dracori hegemony is demanding blood. Your blood, specifically. I did not seduce anyone. Alindra chose me. She has her own mind, her own heart. The Emperor's eyes narrowed. You dare speak her name so casually? You dare suggest that you are worthy of my daughter's attention. I am not worthy, Daniel said honestly. I know that. I am just an engineer from a young primitive species. I have no wealth, no power, no noble blood. But I love her, and she loves me. Is that not worth something?" For a moment, something flickered in the Emperor's eyes. Something almost like pain. But it vanished quickly, replaced by cold anger. Love does not stop wars. Love does not feed hungry people. Love does not keep an empire safe. He leaned closer to Daniel. "You have doomed millions to die for your selfish feelings." The door opened again. Ambassador Laura Bennett entered, her face set in hard lines. "Emperor Thalvarin," she said formally, "I must protest the arrest of a human citizen. Daniel Carter has diplomatic protection under the treaty between our peoples. This human has interfered with royal affairs. He has damaged relations between the Valorian Empire and the Dracori hegemony. Diplomatic protection does not cover such crimes." "What crimes?" "Talking to your daughter? Being her friend?" Bennett shook her head. "You cannot arrest someone for falling in love. I can do whatever I wish. I am the Emperor. And if you execute a human citizen without proper trial, you will have a diplomatic incident with Earth as well." "Is that what you want? 2 potential enemies instead of 1? The Emperor and the ambassador stared at each other. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. Finally, the Emperor stepped back. "The human will not be executed. Yet, he will face a trial to prove his worthiness. If he fails, which he will be exiled from Valorian space forever. My daughter will forget about him and fulfill her duty. And if he passes?" Bennett asked. The Emperor smiled coldly. "He will not pass." They left Daniel alone in his cell. Hours crawled by like days. He tried to sleep, but could not. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Alindra's face. He wondered if she was safe. He wondered if she regretted her choice. The next morning, Daniel was brought to the Great Hall. The same hall where, just days ago, there had been celebration and music. Now, it was filled with nobles who looked at him like he was something unpleasant they had stepped in. Alindra was there too. She stood near her father's throne, surrounded by guards. When she saw Daniel, her eyes widened with fear and hope. "This trial will determine if the human Daniel Carter is worthy of joining the Valorian royal family," a herald announced. "He will face 3 tests. If he fails any of them, he will be exiled. If he passes all 3, the Emperor will consider his petition." The first test was wealth. Daniel was asked to present his possessions, his properties, his savings. He had nothing but his engineering tools and a few books. The nobles laughed. How could a man with nothing support a princess? The second test was lineage. Daniel was asked to name his ancestors, to list their achievements and honors. His grandfather had been a farmer. His grandmother had worked in a factory. His parents were teachers. The nobles laughed again. How could a man with no noble blood stand among them? The third test was combat. Daniel was given a weapon and told to face a Valorian champion in single combat. The champion was twice his size and had trained in warfare since childhood. Daniel lasted less than a minute before he was on the ground, the champion's blade at his throat. The nobles laughed loudest at this. Some threw food at him. Others shouted insults about humans and their weakness. Daniel pulled himself to his feet, blood dripping from a cut on his face. He looked at the crowd that mocked him, at the Emperor who smiled with cold satisfaction, at Alindra who had tears streaming down her cheeks. He had failed every test. He had proven what they all believed, that humans were poor, common, and weak. But the trial was not over. "There is one final question," the Emperor announced, rising from his throne. "A question that only I may ask." He walked down the steps until he stood directly in front of Daniel. "Human, you have failed every test. You have nothing to offer. You are nothing. Tell me, why should I allow you to marry my daughter?" Daniel looked up at the Emperor. His body hurt. His pride hurt worse. But somewhere deep inside him, a small flame still burned. "I cannot offer wealth," he said slowly. "I cannot offer noble blood. I cannot win fights against warriors who have trained their whole lives." He paused, gathering his strength. "But I can offer her something that none of your princes or lords or champions can give." "And what is that?" the Emperor demanded. Daniel stood straighter. His voice grew stronger. "I can offer her a partner who sees her. Not the princess. Not the crown. Her, Alindra. The woman who loves blue flowers and cries at sad songs. The woman who never got to be herself because everyone wanted her to be something else." The hall had gone silent. Even the nobles had stopped laughing. "I can offer her freedom," Daniel continued. "Freedom to be who she really is. Freedom to choose her own path. Freedom to love without conditions or treaties attached." He turned to look at Alindra. She was staring at him with wide eyes, her hand pressed over her heart. "I can offer her something simple and true. I can offer her a love that asks for nothing in return except to be loved back." He faced the Emperor again. "Maybe that is not worth much to an empire. But to me, it is worth everything. And I think maybe it is worth everything to her too." The silence stretched on and on. Then Alindra stepped forward, breaking free from her guards. She walked down the steps and took Daniel's hand. "This is why I chose him," she said to her father. "This is what I need. Not treaties. Not alliances. Just someone who loves me for who I am." The Emperor stared at them both. His face was unreadable. "Father," Alindra said softly, "please." And for the first time, Daniel saw the Emperor not as a ruler, but as a father. A father who loved his daughter, even if he had forgotten how to show it. The final judgment would come tomorrow. The night before the final judgment was the longest of Daniel's life. He was returned to his cell, but this time he was not alone. Kevin came to visit, brought by Ambassador Bennett, who had argued for hours for the right. "You did good," Kevin said through the bars. "That speech was something else. I just told the truth. That is what made it powerful." Kevin pressed his hand against the barrier. "Whatever happens tomorrow, I want you to know that I am proud to be your friend." "Thanks, Kevin. That means a lot." When Kevin left, Daniel lay on his bench and stared at the ceiling. He thought about everything that had happened. A wrong turn. A garden. A princess who had never been asked about her favorite color. It all seemed like a dream, but it was real. And tomorrow, it would either end in joy or in exile. He slept fitfully and woke to the sound of his cell door opening. The guards said nothing as they led him through the station. The corridors were empty. It was very early morning, too early for most people to be awake, that they did not take him to the great hall. Instead, they brought him to a smaller room, a private chamber with windows that looked out at the stars. Waiting inside were Emperor Thalvarin and Princess Alindra, just the three of them. No nobles, no audience, no ceremony. The Emperor gestured for the guards to leave. When they were alone, he walked to the window and stood with his back to Daniel. "Do you know how I met my wife?" the Emperor asked. His voice was different, softer, tired. "No, Your Majesty. She was a musician. Not noble, not wealthy. She played in the court orchestra. I heard her perform one evening, and I could not look away." The Emperor sighed. "I loved her from the first moment, but I was the crown prince. I was expected to marry someone important, someone who could bring power to the empire." He turned to face Daniel. "I chose duty. I married a princess from another great house. It was a good political match, but my heart always belonged to the musician." Alindra made a small sound of surprise. "Father, you never told me this. It is not something I am proud of. I let duty destroy my chance at happiness. I told myself it was the right thing to do. The noble thing. The Emperor shook his head. My wife died knowing she was my second choice. My musician died alone, thinking I did not love her. And I have spent 50 years ruling an empire while my heart remained empty. Daniel did not know what to say. He had not expected this. The Emperor walked toward him, his golden eyes searching Daniel's face. You said you could offer my daughter a partner who truly sees her, who loves her for herself, not for her crown. He paused. I never had that. I never gave it. And I have regretted it every single day. Father, Alendra whispered. The Emperor raised his hand to silence her. He kept his eyes on Daniel. There is an old law in our empire, ancient, from the days before we had treaties and politics. It says that any member of the royal family may choose a bond of the heart, a marriage based on love, not duty. It can only be invoked once in a lifetime, and it cannot be refused. Daniel's heart began to beat faster. My daughter has invoked this law, the Emperor continued. And as much as it pains me, as much as it complicates everything, I cannot deny her. He reached out and placed his hand on Daniel's shoulder. The weight of it was surprising. Heavy but not threatening. You passed the only test that truly matters, the Emperor said. You proved that you love my daughter for who she is, that you would give everything for her, even when you have nothing to give. He smiled, and it was a sad smile. Perhaps your people are not so primitive after all. Perhaps you understand something that we have forgotten. What is that, Your Majesty? That love is not weakness. That choosing happiness is not selfish. That sometimes the bravest thing we can do is open our hearts. The Emperor stepped back. He looked at Alindra and nodded. She ran to Daniel and threw her arms around him. He held her tight, feeling her warmth, breathing in the scent of her hair. He still could not believe this was real. There will be consequences, the Emperor warned. The Dracori will be angry. There may be conflict. Many in the court will never accept a human in the royal family. We will face it together, Alendra said. Her face pressed against Daniel's chest. I will do everything I can to be worthy of her, Daniel promised. The Emperor nodded slowly. I believe you will try. And perhaps that is enough. He walked to the door, then stopped. My daughter's favorite color is blue. I should have asked her that a long time ago. He left without another word. Daniel and Alindra stood alone in the chamber, holding each other as the stars shone through the window. There were tears on both their faces, but they were tears of joy. What happens now? Daniel asked. Now we build a life together. Alindra pulled back to look at him. It will not be easy. There will be people who hate us. Challenges we cannot imagine. But we will have each other. That is all I need. They walked together to the observation deck, their favorite place. The station was starting to wake up. Soon, word would spread that the Emperor had given his blessing. There would be shock, outrage, celebration, and everything in between. But for now, it was just the two of them, watching the stars. Kevin found them there an hour later. He stopped in the doorway, taking in the sight of Daniel holding hands with the princess of the Valorian Empire. So, it worked out? Kevin asked. It worked out, Daniel said with a grin. Does this mean I have to bow to you now? Are you technically royalty? Alindra laughed. He will be a prince consort, yes. But I do not think Daniel wants people bowing to him. I am still just an engineer, Daniel said. I just happen to be an engineer who got very lucky. Lucky, Kevin repeated with a shake in his head. You accidentally walk into a royal garden, fall in love with a princess, get arrested, fail every single test, and somehow end up engaged. That is not luck. That is something else entirely. What would you call it? Kevin thought for a moment. I would call it very human. Alindra squeezed Daniel's hand. I am starting to think that being human is a wonderful thing. They stood together as the station buzzed with news and rumors. Ahead of them lay challenges, adventures, and a future that neither could have predicted. The galaxy was vast and full of dangers, but it was also full of possibilities. Daniel looked at Alindra, at the woman he loved, at the future princess who had chosen a simple engineer over empires and treaties. I still cannot believe you said yes, he admitted. She smiled, her golden eyes bright with happiness. I still cannot believe you wished for it. Most people would have been too afraid. I am terrified, Daniel said honestly. But some things are worth being terrified for. Yes, Alindra agreed. They are. Outside the window, the stars continued their eternal dance. And somewhere in the vastness of space, two hearts beat as one. A human and an alien. A princess and an engineer. A love story that would be told across the galaxy for generations to come. Sometimes, the greatest adventures begin with getting lost. And sometimes, the greatest loves begin with a single wish. Daniel had wished for something impossible. And the universe, in its infinite wisdom, had answered yes.